Welcome to UIC Alumni Exchange. My name is Karen Corman, and I have the privilege of being the Executive Director of your UIC Alumni Association. Through our UIC Alumni Exchange series, we work to bring our alumni and friends a variety of programs and topics so you can explore, connect, and even escape from the everyday with a community of UIC faculty, staff, and alumni experts. You'll hear me say this a few times today, but I encourage you to visit our website at go.uic.edu/alumni exchange, and I'll go ahead and put that in chat here in just a moment, for our latest and greatest programming. And with that, I'm excited to start this program today, as we are joined by alumnus and faculty member Brian Porter. During this hour, Brian will break down project management strategies so you can implement these strategies and techniques in your life and your work. Thank you so much, Brian, for being with us here today, and I'll turn it over to you to begin the program.
You got it. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. This is going to be a very fast hour. I got a lot of materials crammed in here. I do say thank you for the cameras, because then when I tell a dad joke and I say everybody roll their eyes, I know that my camera's still working. And those are the only types of jokes I'm allowed to tell. So sorry, I have no choice there. A little bit about me. I did graduate from UIC from the chemical engineering program last millennium is the way I tell people. I see a few of you have also graduated there in the 19 somethings. I ended up working in engineering for about 5 years before I decided I want to do something more a little bit different, and eventually went back, got my master's degree from Boston University in project management. I then focused in my career on both product development and on managing projects for events, construction, a lot of different areas. The types of projects I've managed have been between the size of about $3,000 to $350 million. So a lot of different variety of background and experience there. But I want to know from you, we're going to throw a poll up on the screen here. What is your level of project management experience? I just want to see that from the group. That's going to be up for probably about 15 seconds. So get your vote in quickly so we can keep moving along. As long as it's not grandpa jokes. Thanks, Dan. Not there yet. My oldest daughter is married, but that was only 3 weeks ago. So give them a little time. All right. All right. So we have a big variety here. What I see, we've got about, we got a whole bunch that are less than a year to those that are 10 or more years. So it's good to know we got variety, and maybe some of you are just here to basically see or interested in what the result is. Let's get moving on the materials. So what is a project? A project is, by definition, I'm going to pull this up. It is from PMI, the Project Management Institute. So PMI is the big name, of course, for the US. Europe actually has another one. There's some smaller ones in the US. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just saying they are the biggest. The one that they use is a project as a temporary endeavor. So when we say a temporary endeavor, it's something that is going to be limited time frame. It has a start and a finish, and it is to create something unique. So a project cannot be repetitive in nature. And it says a product, a service, or a result. And I'm actually going to give you a couple of additional things I'm going to be writing on the screen here. I told people I should have applied for John Madden's job when he left. I love scribbling on the screen and putting stuff there. I'm not saying I'm very good at it, but we can say that a project could be related to something that is product oriented. So maybe it's the latest iThing that's coming out. Product, physical, construction. It could be related to service. So that could be the hospital, I'm going to say, admit procedure. So how do we get people into the hospital faster, more efficiently? It could be a result. It could be something like an election. These are some of the toughest projects too. Think about an election. It's pass fail. Your project can't be like, oh, we were 99% on time or 99% on budget. It's pretty good. No, it's pass fail. You're either elected or you're not. So the campaign manager, and I'm going to add one more, event planning. And I'm actually going to throw it in here because I'm going to use it as an example. Wedding planner. A wedding planner is a project manager. So to take project management from the workplace and make it usable for your personal, a birthday party, a wedding plan, which we just did up till 3 weeks ago. Don't worry, my daughter had a wedding coordinator to help besides just dad. But we want to look at projects from a broader picture. A lot of times people think about projects based on their experience, just what you do. Now, some important perspectives that we have to look at is it's not just you as a participant. If you're on a team, sure, there's the perspective of being a team member, the experts that work on it, a subject matter expert. Of course, the project manager has their perspective of wanting to get something done on time and on budget. And then there's the sponsor. The sponsor is generally referred to as the individual who has the authority and the money to make decisions for the project. So I want you to think about that. Your sponsor is whomever, it could be a client if it's external, or it could be somebody within your organization. Anybody who works with IT, you probably have other departments, people within your organization that are the customer. So the sponsor, they're the customer in that case. So we want you to think about this from multiple perspectives. We also want to look at what is the attribute of a project. So I mentioned it's unique, it's one time. Projects are not repetitive. There's something that we have to look at that is going to be, hopefully a one-off, but it could be a variation on a theme. It's going to have a lot of interdependent tasks, which means it might require a lot of different departments, stakeholders from different groups. You may have people that are in different parts of a hospital, or if you're doing construction, a lot of different disciplines there. It's going to use a lot of resources. And when we say resources, we're not just talking people. It's machines, facilities, capital money, things like that. It has a limited time frame, which we already identified. Has a customer, I mentioned, could be internal or external, and generally there's some degree of uncertainty. Oh yeah, and we don't have unlimited budget, right? Anybody have an unlimited budget? Because never mind. Even those like Apple, Facebook, Amazon, all the big names, they don't have an unlimited budget. So why do we need projects? Why do projects even exist? What's the purpose? It's to create something unique, something that is desired. And I already addressed, because I wanted to get that out of the way, but here now you have it on the slides, a product, something can be used or sold. So it could be something as simple as toilet paper. We've come up with a softer toilet paper, a more biodegradable toilet paper, or it could be the latest thing from Apple or a Samsung electronic device. It could be construction related, home renovation or a new home. When we talk about services, I mentioned already that it could be like a hospital, but another service project would be how to get people in and out of the Great Clips. You go to get a haircut. Okay, a lot of you are like, I'm not going to admit to going to Great Clips. But what is the process to get them in and out? How do you apply them to getting the person through? So service could be, or a lawn service or a pool service or anything that I always tease about the hair cutting, because I'm like, you think about a service, you don't walk away with a product. You actually leave with less than you came in with. That's a service. Improving some service offering, or as we said, an outcome, which could be like an election that I said, or it could just be a document. A lot of those that are in government, your product, it's not actually a product, it's a result, it's a report. So a statistical report for water quality, that's the outcome of your project. Projects drive change though, and it's all about creating some value for your end customer. So what does a project really look like? We want to be able to decipher a project from operations. So over the next 2 slides, we're going to look at that. And as Karen had mentioned before we jumped in, if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I said I'm going to lecture. My goal is to get about 45 to 47 minutes. I tried timing this. So towards the end, then we'll try and get through any of the questions that you might have. All right. So a project that we've got should have a life cycle. There's a beginning and an end, a start and a finish. We define the time frame. All right. I shouldn't be so insulted by this, but I've had a lot of people when I told them I'm a project manager and they go, oh, you do calendars. Like, well, yes, that's a part of what we do, but a project manager is a lot more than just doing schedules or calendars. And after talking to them, they're like, okay, so you do calendars. I'm like, yes, that's a part of it, but trying to convey the bigger picture of what project management takes. Knowing the schedule is one thing, but also recognizing people and the interactions between all sorts of different individuals, skill sets, departments. They all have different characters. All right. I don't want you to put this in the chat box, because I don't know if you have anybody that you work with on here either. Nobody's to get anybody upset, but I bet you have a department that is your arch nemesis, right? You ever read the Dilbert comics? Engineering and marketing. Ooh, you got the accounting department and sales, or credit department and sales. There's always somebody's got like the arch nemesis that they're like, oh, if this department wasn't there, my life would be easier. And so we look at these interdependencies. A project manager can't be biased. We're trying to get all parties to play together, to play nice for the end goal, for the result that we're developing. A project is very unique. It's not reduced to something that is routine. If you've got something that's routine, it's not a project. I asked my youngest daughter is learning to drive right now. She's gonna be 16 in a few months. And I said, if she had to change a flat tire, is that a project? And a lot of people are like, well, yeah, it's complex. But it's not, because there's instructions in the glove box that tell her exactly how to do it. It's repetitive. It's something that's happened before. Now, designing the car and how to change the tire in the book, that was a project. So we want to think about this. And as I said, there's always conflict from different stakeholders. We're going to get into stakeholders a little more, so I don't want to go too deep into that right now. All right, so a few examples. I'm not going to read all of these, don't worry, but the difference between projects and operations. So designing a new product, see, told you, John Madden, it's not pretty, but I write on the screen. Designing a new product, that's definitely a project, but selling the project to the customers, that's sales, that's operations. It's going to be the same process day in and day out, trying to sell whatever the feature is. If we are looking at a new budget system, if you develop that new budget system, that's a project, but the monthly reports, that's operations. Day after day, we're seeing the same thing occur. And if we're looking at developing a new bank loan, absolutely, that's a project. New. Do you notice every time? New, something that's new. It's being created. Operations is repetitive. And this is where a lot of companies make their money. I think Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has, what is their goal? Put out juice, put out water, put out the cola, put out all of your fluids and sell it. But they have projects to build new facilities. And we just passed it a month ago. Coca-Cola every year has projects for whatever their latest commercial is for the polar bears, right? Around the holidays, I don't know why polar bears like Coca-Cola so much, but apparently Coca-Cola thinks they do. But it's a marketing project as opposed to operations of moving the fluid or a construction project to build a new facility or new production lines. So recognizing in your line of business, each of you has to think about, all right, what's project and what is operational? Think at home. Of course, you got operations every day. What are we going to eat? We need to have dinner for the family. I need to wear clothes every morning. I need to shower regularly. I see a few others are learning to draw too, and I'm okay with that. A lot of times I'll ask people to edit and do things on the screen too when we teach a class. So, all right, let's get to the hierarchy. So there's a few other terms. If you work in a bigger organization, I use this a lot. There's something called the portfolio. You've probably heard portfolio for your finances. It's everything you own. So whether it's stocks, commodities, bonds, whether you're talking about owning land, whether you own gold and silver and platinum or anything like that, it's everything in your ownership. So the portfolio is pretty much everything, right? Programs are a collection of similar projects that have a benefit being run together. Benefit run together, something like that. And we talked about projects being unique, one-time, limited budget, schedule, and resources. So that's the hierarchy. The example I give is the Olympic Games. So if any of you have taken or will take a class with me someday, you might see this one again. I love using this example, but the Olympic Games is the portfolio of everything going on. A program, I'm going to use the summer. I know we're coming up on winter, but I'm going to say the summer is everything that is track and field. And the project might be the women's track, but that can be broken down into sub-projects. And that could be then each of the events would be a part of that major project. But you may have a separate project manager just coordinating that. You're going to have a project manager just for men's javelin, for women's hammer throw, for so you can break this down a hierarchy to realize that the project actually falls under this grander scheme of how everything works. All right, I'm going to take a breather there. Any quick questions? I didn't see anybody throw anything in the chat. We're doing okay time-wise because I'm talking at about 1,000 words a minute. All right. So a deliverable. Now, I want to make it clear, the deliverable is the what. Time for a dad joke. There we go. I got to insert that there. Yeah, see, I should have had a few prepared for it. The deliverable is the what. So let me get my font a little bit bigger. It's the what we are developing. What are we producing? It's that product, the service, the event. The benefit is the value we get from it. What do we expect? Why do we want this project? Why do we want the deliverable? And the milestone is a checkpoint on the deliverable or the outcome, depending on your project management terminology or language. So here's my example. The deliverable is 1 hour of PM. We're talking about project management for 1 hour. That's the deliverable. Did you all come here? What's the benefit? I bet the benefit is not listening to Brian yap for an hour. It's not like, woo, man, do I feel excited by that? Wow, I'm a better person. No, the value is either knowledge or credit for something, or okay, after 1 hour, you're not getting a promotion. But a lot of people who take the class, they've asked, why Brian teaches class on project management. Why did you take it? They're like, I want to get a raise. I want to get a promotion. That's the value that they're looking for. And the checkpoint could be hours or days. It's some inspection on that deliverable. Are we making progress? Okay. So just to give you some of the basic terms that are used repetitively. And some of you are like, I've been doing this 20 years. Duh. Others, less than 1 year, probably like, I've never heard this before. All right. Let's keep moving. All right. This is a big topic. And this has been really big for the last 5 years, I'm going to say. 5 to 7 years. For those of you that deal with construction or things that are very well known what you want at the end, it tends to be predictive in nature. Those that have customers that when you ask, what do you really want? Their response is, I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it. They're going to lean towards the agile side. So I want to give you a couple, let's see here how much time I have, because this is a big topic. Predictive is a known end result. It is also known as traditional PM. It's known as waterfall PM. It's also known as classic PM. I've only seen that a couple of times, but PMI themselves actually put that in. Agile is when there's a flexible result that we're looking for. It's also known as adaptive. It's known as Scrum sometimes, and it's also known as modern PM. So I guess I can put the PM there. A lot of times Agile and PM just stand on their own. But these are some of the terms. Here's the example I want to give you. Predictive versus Agile. All right, I'm going to do something that probably will get everybody like, yeah, like we can travel. Imagine travel. I said imagine it. You guys are going to come. I didn't see who's farthest, although I saw Maple Grove and St. Paul, Minnesota, and kudos to you fellas for living there in January. I actually was born and raised just outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul in Hopkins, Edina. And then moved and lived in Chicago for 30 some years. And a few years back decided, man, I am tired of the winters. I am now in Fort Myers, Florida. So to my fellow Floridian that was on there, our weather is going to be 75 and sunny today. I'm just saying, if you can work remote, Florida is beautiful right now. What the example I want to give is, if you're going to come, let's say from UIC or from St. Paul, and you're coming all the way down to Fort Myers, Florida, a predictive project manager will plan all the details in advance. I'm not just talking about like which roads you're going to take and where you think you're going to stop for the night. Predictive means we plan 100% of our scope, our schedule, and our budget. I want to know where I'm going to catch a stoplight. I want to know how long I'm going to sit at a train because I've called and found out enough information to know, okay, maybe that's a little over the top, but Predictive wants to know all the details, lots of planning in advance. Clark W. Griswold, like the family truckster, everything is detailed well in advance. An agile individual says, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. You can plan your traffic patterns, but what if there's an accident? Let's just plan what we want to accomplish today, and we're going to get that far. And if we are done driving at 6 o'clock or we're done driving at 11 o'clock tonight, either way. And so an agilist plans short term, but then they get up the next day and they plan the next day's part of the trip and the next day's part of the trip. So agile and predictive both have a lot of planning, but predictive is upfront because we know what the end result is. Agile, we may not. So an example of an agile project, I give, actually, let's say predictive, a skyscraper. You have to know the plans for a 100-story skyscraper well in advance. You can't just say, well, let's just start building and we'll figure out what it looks like. However, if you're doing software, let's say we program some website, somebody can say, you know what, I'm going to want these 5 pages. Just get started on those, the home page and these 4 subsidiary pages. And once you're into that process, give me a few days, I'll figure out and give you more work. Well, with software, and that's where Agile came from, it absolutely works because you don't have to undo what you did on other pages necessarily. With a skyscraper, you can't build 50 floors and then go, let's make it wider now that we're up here. You can't do that. So predictive, known outcome. Agile, there's flexibility, or as it says, it's agile. All right, so quick poll. We want to see, there's going to be 3 items here. Is your project, will they tend to be, whether it's personal or whether it's work, will it tend to be more agile, hybrid, or predictive? Hybrid is somewhere in between. And I guess I should have gone into that a little bit more. Hybrid is where you have pieces of this agile, but you have some predictive up front. So I'm seeing, all right, how many we got there? We got about half of you in. So we'll give it another second while we get votes tallied up. All right, well, we got about 2/3 entered. Let me go ahead and post that. So it looks like, and that's a good answer, 2/3 of you said hybrid. My answer has always been that 98% of projects are hybrid, because almost every predictive project has some flexibility in it. And every agile project has some predictability to it. Yes, there are those that are on the end, but this is just Brian saying, I think about 98% have some agile and some predictive. They're hybrid. They're a little bit of both. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to clear my screen and keep moving. Oh, got to click the right feature, though. All right. So in predictive, we want to talk briefly about the 5 process groups. These 5 process groups have been around for 25 years through 6 editions of the PMBOK. And they are not gone. They're in the 7th edition of the PMBOK, which was published about 6 months ago. So the latest project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK, maybe I should write that down. I start using terms. They're familiar to me. So the PMBOK is the project management body of knowledge. And this is the collective, everything that everybody knows. So they call it the project management body of knowledge guide. Because the project management body of knowledge is everything that each of you knows, I know, has ever been known about project management. All right, it's kind of nebulous, but that's what they say. So the PMBOK guide is in the 7th edition, and the 5 process groups we look at is initiation. We kick off the project by getting a team together. Then we plan, and the team, does all that planning, looks ahead into the future. Then there's execution. The work is actually done, and this is not the project manager doing the work. The subject matter experts, teammates, contractors. I'm going to have some people like, I'm a project manager and I do my own work. Not as the project manager. I have 2. You got to take off your project manager hat and say, now I'm a subject matter expert. Now I'm an engineer. If I got any other engineers in here, hopefully you can laugh at that. But we also will take and monitor our work. Stage 4 is monitoring, and then we close the project at the end. So this image that's shown here basically says this is getting that team together. We do a lot of planning, and then we do work, and then we replan, and then we do the work as we're going through. We monitor to see if we're on schedule, on budget, using resources correctly, and then we close the project out. I got another view of it on the next slide. So let's see if this works. This graphic is intended to give you a visual on how these 5 different process groups, how much work goes into them. So if you see here, we have the level of effort. A lot of times if you see LOE, that is the intent to say how many work hours go into it. Level of it, people used to call it manpower. We're going gender neutral. So level of effort is how many hours is put in. So there you go. The initiating has a fairly low level of effort, and from minute 1, we staff a team at that point. But then we also have to do the planning processes. So once the team is together, then we start planning. All right, can I throw in another analogy? I guess you guys are muted, so you can't tell me no. That's as funny as I get, by the way. So if you're expecting anything more, I mean, we're half hour in, you're not getting any better joke than that. Initiation is getting the team together. Think about at the end of Sunday night, an NFL team. We're in the playoffs, right? What do NFL teams do? The coach sits down with the team and says, hey, we won this game, but barely. How are we going to win the next playoff game? And so they get their team together. They staff. They get all the sub team together. And then they plan Monday and Tuesday. They're planning, how are they going to win the next playoff game? And that there's a lot of planning that goes into that. Well, the execution happens. In this case, how long is execution? Maybe my example isn't great for this one. The execution is a lot all within a 2-hour period, right? The game is short, but who's doing the execution? The players on the field, not the coaches. So it's by the subject matter experts, the ones who can throw, the ones who catch, the ones who kick. What are the coaches doing? They are monitoring, controlling. During the entire process, they are actually watching from when they're during practices and such. They are controlling to make sure, that the team has the appropriate amount of plays to attempt, and they have the right skill and the right practice. And finally, they close. We've all seen closing for a football game, right? It's afterwards going, we gave it 110%. I mean, it's a team effort. Those closing processes are wrapping up and looking at how did we do in this game? What does that do for an NFL team that won? It puts them right back into the initiation process on their next project. So sorry, I come up with analogies. Sometimes they work, sometimes I don't know. There's 10 knowledge areas. At the end of this hour, to get credit for being here, you'll need to have memorized all of these. No, nothing. All right. I'm getting a few smiles. Thank you. No, you don't have to memorize these, but these are the important areas that we want to have a plan about. We want to know, what are we working on? When is it due? How much is it going to cost? How much risk are we taking? What resources in people, machines, supplies? Hey, thanks, Hugo. I do see the crying laugh sign. I appreciate the mercy for me. A communication plan should be out there. How are we going to buy things to procure them? And how do we manage our stakeholders, the people that are interested in our project? All right, now there's going to be one more poll after this one. I'm interested to see what you all come back with. The iron triangle has been around for more than 30 years, probably goes back to the 60s when project management was really taking a foothold. In this case, the scope is the what, the schedule is the when, and the budget is the how much. These are the big 3. Every executive wants to know, how's the project going? Are we on schedule? And how much of my money have you spent? And if you don't have a sponsor to ask how much money have you spent, consider yourself lucky. But there's also 3 other constraints. The quality of the project, which a lot of times means, are we following the guidelines? Are we being too risky with our project or not risky enough? And using the resources, because I think we're all limited by how many people, the amount of space you have in a facility, things like that. So these are the big 3: scope, the what, schedule, the when, and budget, the how much it costs. All right, so now we're going to throw up another poll. And the question is, which of these 2 are most important to your organization? And if you're like, I'm not working right now, do it for home. Is it's got to be good and it's got to be fast, it's got to be good and it's got to be cheap, or it's got to be fast and cheap? And if it's not very good, oh well. So let me see what we come up with answers here. Everybody thinks. All right, we got about half. Yep, we're just past the halfway point. Give it another minute here. I'm actually surprised. So I got 25 of you that didn't click. There we go. Good. All right. We'll give it another 5-10 seconds here, because what we want to see is what's important to organizations. I've had some people tell me, nah. All right, there we go. Time and cost is usually the lowest. I'm actually surprised that it's that high. Okay. How many of you would say that you personally are willing to say, I want something fast, I want it cheap, I don't care how good it is? A lot of people like, nope, never. I would never do that. They shake their heads and tell me, no, my company would never do that. I usually do this. How many of you have said, I need food, I need it fast, I don't want to spend a lot of money, and it might be kind of tasty, but it's not very good for you. I'm not picking on McDonald's. It's the #1 chain in the world, but it's not because of its best flavorful food. Yeah, French fries are pretty good. And I like their breakfast sandwiches, but their burgers, out of the 33 or 34 burger chains, every year McDonald's is in the bottom 3. They're a burger company that is in the bottom 3 for burgers, and yet they're the biggest chain. It's about fast, and it's about lower cost. It is not about having the best burger. They know their positioning. So the reason I bring this up, you need to understand your projects, whether it's at home. And I got to be honest, my daughter's wedding, what was the criteria? Because they were trying to pay for it themselves. We didn't tell them we were actually going to help them with it. They were trying, my daughter especially, really wanted to pay for their wedding themselves because they knew we paid for our wedding. Her parents, my parents couldn't afford it. You know what she said? We've got a date because he's in the Army. We have to be within this two-week window. That's the only time he was getting vacation. And we don't have a lot of money. So we'll do as good as we can. That was the goal. So recognize personal or professional, we have to make a judgment call and talk to our stakeholders to find out what's of interest to them. All right, some of the influences that we're looking at. These are 2 terms, EEFs, enterprise environmental factors. They kind of explain themselves. So your enterprise, company, whether it's your family, whether it's your business, something like that, it's the environment around you that are certain factors. So it's the way we do things around here. That's the way I explain EEFs, the way we do things around here. Oops. I bet when I was at UIC, I worked in the hazardous waste group. As a chemical engineer, I went to 1,000 of the labs, both medical and on the East Campus, and I collected hazardous waste. I bet that we were a little more regulated than, say, a florist down the street. And yet flowers have an emotional connotation to them, while hazardous waste, it's just waste. Follow the rules and get rid of it. So there's different regulation. And I also use fashion, fashion versus industrial equipment, different way that we do things. OPAs, on the other hand, organizational process assets, the organization has something of value that it owns, an asset that helps the process. So these include things like the process, policies, or procedures. Does anybody not have a purchase order format you have to use where you work? Organizations come up with a process so that people know how they can acquire stuff. And so it's something that you own. They're assets, databases, information, how to assemble something. So these are things that are owned. That corporate knowledge base is very important. And so when I say corporate, it could be a part of a school, it could be a nonprofit, it could be for profit. All right. Normally when I'm teaching a class, I'll say, hey, let's stop for questions, but I got like 8 minutes left. So I'm going to keep going. We'll take the questions after. All right, stakeholders. We talk about stakeholders. We need to identify the different types of individuals who are, and this is mine, this is not from PMI. I look at any person or organization that is invested in, impacted by, or interested in the outcome of the project. So if I can give an example here, let's see, I'm making these up as I go along, so I hope you can all forgive me for that. But it's the way I keep it lively during the session. Somebody who's invested in is going to be your sponsor. So for the wedding, I'm going to say rich grandma. We did not have a rich grandma, but let's pretend we had a rich grandma. That would be your sponsor. There's somebody that's investing in the project. It could be the couple is investing in, and the parents are investing in. Parents, there we go. What is impacted by? I'm going to say the vendors. They're going to make money from this. And we could say let's see, the wedding party. Wedding party. They're going to be impacted by it because it affects their weekends and times with their friends. And who's just merely interested? Neighbors. I wasn't invited to the wedding, but man, that's a big limousine right there, and they're not invested in it. Now you could also have those that are negatively. We a lot of times think about the positive stakeholders, but there's a negative stakeholder. Can anybody think and throw in the chat box who's a negative stakeholder for my wedding scenario? There you go. Dan got it. The ex. The crazy ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend, like, you can't marry them. You're still in love with me. Yeah. You always get some sort of stakeholder that is a competitor. The weather. Weather is a risk. They're not actually an individual, so they're not a stakeholder in that case. But that's a good one that if we had time, we go deep into risk. But we identify who, the level of interest, how much influence do they have over the project? Now, I said an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend when Dan said the ex. Ex-boyfriend or girlfriend has very low power over your wedding. An ex-spouse may say, you can't take the children across the border without my permission to be a flower girl or a ring bearer or something. You can't spend $50,000. You owe me alimony. I don't want to open up any topics there that you're not interested in. But you get the idea that stakeholders can be they can be positive or negative. They can have a lot of power or not. So this is actually a diagram. And during a class, I actually have people right on the screen. We have about 1.5 minutes here. So I don't have time for that. But you might have the couple up here, high power and very positive. They want to get married. So you would put the couple up here and you want to keep them satisfied. The guests, they have low power and they are very positive. So you have guests, but what are the decisions that they get to make? Low power, chicken, fish, or vegetarian. Those are your choices. I mean, you can show up. Are you bringing a +1? What are you going to eat? But they don't get to choose much else for the wedding. We have those ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that have low power and are negative down in this corner, and we monitor them. We don't put a lot of effort. A wedding planner doesn't worry about ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, but the ex-spouse, they may have, or how about, the in-laws don't like this. They may have high power and they may be negative. So we have to manage closely. So the line that I've used over the years, you manage your friends close and you manage your enemies closer. Keep them close. All right. I'm actually going to take a second since I see the questions here. David said, if you found a certain balance in the corporate process items, too much process and people, see it as just another task, but not enough process and there's too much variance. Absolutely. And this depends on your industry and the type of project that you work on, how influenced you are really getting pushed one way or the other. When I did work hazardous waste. After I left UIC, I went to a hazardous waste company. And everything was processed. People's opinions didn't matter. What did the law say? It was very little about people. But I also worked in, I've worked actually with the fashion industry briefly, and it's all about opinion. What do people think? And opinions change constantly. So being aware of the people versus process, it's very, very driven by what industry you're in. I saw John said, any deficiency of the presentation? I can't think what I was saying. Oh, well, thanks, John. I wasn't reading that. I thought it was another question, but thanks. We're going to, we got one more question here. It's not going to be a poll. I need you to throw this into the chat box. Let's throw in the chat box a stakeholder that you consider very important, whether it's at home, and you can say your spouse, or you could say one of your children in the morning, an important stakeholder. But for work, what's an important stakeholder that you need to pay attention to? who somebody that might be forgotten or a hidden stakeholder. So go ahead and throw that in the chat box. I'll give you about a minute there. And then I got to wrap up my stuff. So what else we got? All right. The customer, absolutely. World opinion, yes, in certain areas, yeah. The boss, customer are students. All right. Any others? I mentioned donors. Yes, thank you. I was going to say, because I know we got nonprofits represented. The planet, the individuals who will represent the planet. Yep, the board, even if they're away. Yes, support staff. You know, I worked with wind turbine companies. I've actually worked with oil, gas, coal. I have worked with solar companies around the world, and I worked with wind turbine, the two biggest wind turbine companies in the world. And you know what their biggest, besides oil, coal, gas, you know what their biggest enemy is? The bird lovers. It's the Audubon Society and other bird lovers that say you absolutely have to have protection because we don't want to be killing eagles and hawks and other types of birds in that. There's actually a rule that the wind turbine companies have to keep the bodies of dead birds that were within, I think, 100 yards of a wind turbine. They don't have to do anything with them, but they have to keep them in a freezer. So these companies have told me they got like 7 years worth of dead bird carcasses in freezers with no purpose for them, what to do. Could have been a wolf dragged them there, but they're required to keep them. So I found that kind of funny. All right, let me wrap up my materials and then we'll look for any other questions or insights. The PMI, it's actually very easy. You can go to pmi.org. Very simple website, pmi.org, and you can find all sorts of things on certifications. If you're interested and you do have experience, you can get a PMP, the project management professional, or a portfolio manager. Now that's the highest one, but you start with a PMP, or if you're not experienced, 5, 7 years, lots of projects, you can get an associate in project management. Then your PMP, program management, portfolio management. You can get a scheduling or a risk certification from them. All the information on how to apply, they're usually like $400 or $500 for a test, are there. The one thing on this slide I did want to point out is the talent triangle. Okay, go ahead and laugh with me. About 7 years ago, the Project Management Institute said that they wanted project managers to be more well-rounded. So they came up with the talent triangle. I went, you're using a triangle for people to be more well-rounded? I said, I know this is tough, but why not a circle with wedges of the pie? That just seemed kind of silly to me. But anyhow, they wanted you to have skills in the scope, schedule, budget, documentation. We also have to have some experience in leadership and how to work with people and a business mindset. And so if you do end up getting a certification, you need to maintain hours in each of these areas. Over 3 years, it's 60 hours. You have to have a minimum of 8 hours. 1 day every 3 years learning about leadership or business or about project management. And then the balance can be in the other sections. So let's see here. Let's see. So here's our pitch. We've given you a very rapid. I'm sorry if I went too fast. Some people are like, Brian talks too fast. I get that. But I wanted to cram in as much detail as I could. The Alumni Association is your way to get these, I guess, hour-long and information, good commercials. The extended campus is actually where I teach for UIC. I teach in the business school as well. But extended campus is for corporate training, for those that are looking for experience as we move down the line. We're actually teaching 5 Saturdays in a row. Starting January 29th, I will have a 5-day fundamentals of project management. And then in March and the first weekend in April, those 5 Saturdays, we have the PMP exam prep class. So if you're like, hey, I've been doing project management for 10 years, there's a 5 Saturday class to get you ready for the exam. And I've had a pretty good pass rate over the years. People taking the class, they do very well afterwards. So if you're looking, that class is going to cover a lot of the things that we just talked about, the basics, the framework, in much more detail. Time, cost, and resources, and dealing with risk. I love the risk section. And in the 5th class, you will actually work for 4 hours with a team of people you only met online in our Zoom class and build an entire project plan in 4 hours. And people are like, I can't believe in 4 hours I can do this. And in 6 weeks, I can't do it with people I'm supposed to be able to do it with that I work with. I said, well, it's Saturdays. Nobody's distracting with emails, and I don't care if you make up the data. So little advantage there. All of these topics are included. So we have 25 different sessions in 4 Saturdays in the fundamentals. Last little pitch for me. If you guys are interested, sorry, this is, I got at least a little self-awareness for everybody. I have a website. It's EEE Consulting Inc. So if you look, it's EEE Consulting Inc. And this is my e-store. I've actually written 6 books over the last few years, 4 of them in the last 2 years. I've been very busy writing. I've had a lot of people ask for certain topics in that, and for a couple of universities I work with. Wanted to make sure that we got those details, but this one was added recently, extreme interviews and resumes for people at hire and such, a class on motivating individuals and employees. So a lot of the project management, you deal with people. Whew. Thank you. I said 47, darn it, 47 and a half minutes.
Brian, you are incredible. Thank you for your energy and for the presentation and walking through all of this. We did have a couple of questions come in, so let me go ahead and try and ask them to you quickly. And by the way, I talk quickly too, so this is why you and I get along perfectly. Do you have any advice for project managers on managing up? For example, when a higher up has missed a deadline, which threatens to make the entire project late?
You got to be careful with this. My method is sarcasm. I actually like to tease. I build a rapport usually with those that are upward, and I like to be able to tease them and say, hey, so I got everything done on time, and now how are you going to do? And when they're late on something, they're usually like, well, I don't like to say nag, but I do want to make sure that I have a preparation. So I will tell sponsors or executives or those that are higher ups, if you don't provide and we end up running late, I hope you recognize that's on you. And I tell them that at the beginning of the project. So when I bring it up later, and I'm a little sarcastic about it, they're like, yeah, I know it's on me, but I've set the stage for it. So if you can set the stage politely, maybe not sarcastically, that might help.
And that's perfect advice. What are some of the most common pitfalls that you see with new project managers that they face?
Actually, I didn't share my top 3, and I'm going to put that up on the screen here, Brian's top 3, because when I have Brian's top 3, when I have new people, they've said in 30 seconds, how do you sum this up? Ask 1,000 questions. You want to know, for the individuals that are new, ask 1,000 questions. Start your project right, because a lot of times people fail because they don't know enough at the beginning. They assume they know, but they don't narrow down their bullseye to know exactly where their target is. Number 2 is communicate the heck out of your project. And I do say heck. Communicate the heck out of your project as much as you can. And finally, lessons learned. At the end, make sure that you get everybody together, or every couple of weeks, which is an agile tool. Every couple of weeks, get people together and say, what have we learned? So we get smarter and better at what we're doing. This is my advice to new individuals.
That's great. And I think the piece about ask 1,000 questions, it has to be on everybody's plate, not just the project manager, but the people around them, to keep asking questions, because it's a new project. So another question that came in: if you are 100% dedicated, if you are a 100% dedicated resource to a project, how do you handle it if your everyday manager keeps pulling you off for tasks and makes it look like you're not meeting deadlines as a project manager?
I've had that happen, and I actually called a meeting and didn't let the 2 managers know that I had called both of them to come to me with a meeting, and asked them to sit down and said, hey, here's the deal. There's only one of me, and I'm stressed out by this. So I need you 2 to help me understand. This is my understanding. Help me. The 2 of them in the same room went, oh, it's easier to beat up on the employee when you don't see the other one. So we negotiated and we worked through it. And afterwards, both of them were like, boy, that made me uncomfortable. I went, well, now you know how I felt. Now you got to be careful. I will say I have, if you can't tell, a certain demeanor that I don't like getting pushed around. Be careful. Don't get yourself fired being cocky in a certain way. But I did it to put them in a place where they couldn't put me in the awkward position any longer.
So that's interesting. So if you're the employee and it's your manager and somebody, would you bring in another manager? Would you bring in a colleague? It just probably depends on the situation.
I was like project manager versus functional manager.
Got
Or
it.
if I had two functional managers, I'd ask them help rectify my time. What are priorities? And I wouldn't say it's you versus you. It's we all have priorities. Can you two help me understand my priorities?
So we can be successful. That's
And when they're in the same room together, one can't say, well, mine's the top priority. And the other one says, well, mine's the top priority. They have to figure out and let them argue rather than you try and playing referee between them.
even though they're probably both coming to the table thinking their priority is the top.
Absolutely. And they may walk away thinking that too.
Right. Okay, another question. What is the best way to work across departments in a large institution to complete a common goal? I don't know if this came from a UIC person, but it would apply.
Been there, done that, a couple of years. Collaboration is a word that we didn't use here, but collaboration is, I love the best term for this is co-creation. Start from the beginning and get everybody on the same page. The problem is that we all just start doing our job and we all think our job is the only job. And I know this because I was an engineer for how many years? And then I started to realize, hey, there's a world outside of the engineering group. And then I was in the technical sales side. And I'm like, hey, there's a world outside of just the customer and us. There's others to support. So get those parties involved up front. That communication, that stakeholder analysis will really help.
I think you answered this a little bit in your last answer, but the question is, if your projects are stalled, how can you get them moving again?
It depends why. That one I'm a little uncertain on. It depends why they're stalled. Is it because the priority of the project is low? If you got 200 projects in an organization, it's priority 199. I don't know that you should. It might be something that should be taken off the plate, and you need to ask, is this a priority? If it's not a priority for my sponsor or for the customer, then why am I making it a priority?
So a bit of a reassessment.
Yeah, I'd ask questions of why is it stalled before trying to solve how to get it moving.
That's great advice. I was thinking we'd pull the two functional managers in again and say, why isn't this moving? So,
yeah.
Another question, might be my last one. Do you have any project management advice for teams that do not have a designated project manager?
Actually, in an agile project, the project manager isn't actually in charge. The team is in charge, and the team is self-led. The project manager, scrum master, agilist, other terms, team leader, whatever, they're there to help the process and to help knock down roadblocks, but the team coordinates with one another. And again, it builds rapport. You build rapport with everybody on the team, get to know them, socialize early on so that you have, I don't want to say friendship, but you've got enough of a collaborative mentality that you're willing to go, wait a minute, I don't want to do that because that's going to harm this team member. And somebody else like, well, why do you care about them so much? Because it's we, it's not me and them, it's we.
It's interesting. So much of it is relationship building, and just as you talked about the HR side of things and just the human resources and people interacting. And so it's very interesting. I lied. I do have another question.
I see 3 or 4 in the chat too. So
okay, great. Well, do you want to? I just saw one that came across. But do you use a project management software that you recommend?
All right. Most organizations have their own. I can name probably 25 of them. I won't go through that right now. But Microsoft Project is what I still use because I get a copy through UIC. Now, I think I might have been the only one through UIC because I asked for teaching the classes, but now that they have licensing capability, maybe others can get it as a part of UIC. I use it because I'm familiar with it, but I have looked at Primavera and Clarizen and Jira and all these other software. It's based on the organization. They look very similar. Certain ones have better features. Guess what? They cost a lot more. So.
And then you said there was a few questions. I don't know if they were direct chatted to you or if you just
No, I'm going back. I was trying to look. Maybe some of them were just fun comments here because I saw some question marks. But would you say this presentation is for the birds? Ha ha, that one's not. Do PM still use RACI or Darcy system? Yes. And in fact, when we go through resources, I tend to use the RACI with the S. So it's the RASCI with the support category in it. Absolutely. I use that whether it's Agile or Predictive. I see that as a hybrid tool. Let's see, were there others? Just so everybody recognizes it, I did put my email. If you have further project management questions or some interest, or you're looking for a book, or you just want to chat, I check my email every day. So I'll try and help anybody out. There was another one. Is an exam fee included in the course? No. For the PMP prep exam prep course, that is just for us teaching the class. We pay a lot of money to have the rights for their slides from PMI. but it is, yeah, it's 5 days of, hey, here's how to pass the test. Yay, on a Saturday. Any other questions?
Well, we'll see if they come in, but well, Brian, thank you so much for all of this. And I'm also going to make a plug for Extended Campus because I think UIC Extended Campus does an excellent job. Obviously, look at our stellar faculty member that we have on the call today. But I do encourage people to check out Extended Campus. They oftentimes offer a discount for alumni for several of their courses. So please make sure you look for that too. But thank you again, Brian, for this incredible presentation. We're so proud that you are on faculty at UIC and just spending all of your time and energy with us today. It's been just wonderful. Just really quickly, to close this out, please join us for our next Alumni Exchange program, which will be next Tuesday, January 25th at noon Central Standard Time, as we'll be joined by UIC College of Applied Health Sciences professor, David Marquez. Every January 1st, many Americans resolve to eat better and exercise, but by the end of the month, these resolutions are often abandoned. Perhaps some of you can relate to that. I certainly can. Professor Marquez will discuss strategies for building an exercise routine that you can stick to for the long run. Please join us for a late January motivation boost as Professor Marquez presents Keep Moving, How to Find and Keep an Exercise Routine. To find a recording of this episode and all of our past episodes, please go to go.uic.edu/alumni-exchange. And of course, please be on the lookout for that brief survey I mentioned at the beginning. Thank you again, Brian, for all of your time and your talent and really your enthusiasm. This has been a wonderful program today. Thank you to all of us for joining. Thank you to all of you, for joining us for Alumni Exchange today. We look forward to seeing you at a future program, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.